Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight on Spanning the Need. Tonight, we'll be talking sports. Who else to talk sports with us? Former and retired Cleveland Browns, Felix Wright. Thank you for joining us, Felix. Hope you're doing well during this pandemic.
Hanging in there, and I appreciate the invite. It's been a while since I've seen you, so it's good to see you this way.
Yeah, and it is, and with everything going on and just in general, just really making the connection through this. This is probably the easiest way to do it is we try to social distance. So we're able to really communicate and really go back and forth and seeing how you're doing and making sure that you're healthy as well.
Well, I'm trying to perfect the social distancing the best I can. I know my family is. I just don't know how they're going to do the social distancing out on the football field.
Well, and we'll talk a little bit about that once we get to that, and that's going to be a big challenge for the NFL when we talk football and having fans in the audience,
Right.
or in the stadiums. I know there's been a lot of articles out there that talk about no fans, having fans. So we'll get a little bit into that, especially what the Cleveland Browns are doing. They've done a lot of different things for social distancing and really are changing the way they're doing stuff by having their Zoom meetings, having their workouts from home, pretty much.
Yes.
So
very different times as far as a football player, and for that matter, any sports that you're in, baseball, hockey, basketball. It's going to be crucial that they make the right decisions going forward to keep everybody healthy and as we've seen here this week when everybody's headed back to work, how the numbers are starting to rise again. So, which are a little scary. So, got to be really careful, and we just got to make sure that we do listen to the facts and listen to the people that know what they're talking about, and go forward from there.
And that brings up a great thing is you're retired. You've been out of the league for a little bit, but you still are with the league doing a variety of different functions. So let's actually get into that a little bit. Felix, how did you really start your football career?
Well, I grew up in Missouri, small town, Carthage, Missouri, of about 11,000 people. And I started playing at the Pee Wees in the third grade is when I started playing football. It's something that my mom and dad put me in, and I excelled at it at a young age and played the Pee Wees from third and fourth, and the midgets from fifth and sixth, and then moved on up into junior high and high school, and got better as I went. I probably didn't really blossom until got into high school, but that's where I started, and actually played three sports in high school: football, basketball, and baseball. Probably my best sport was baseball. And I thought that's probably where I'd end up going somewhere to play baseball. I had a lot of offers from some Arizona State, had all the Big Eight. It was the Big Eight, now it's the Big 12. Had all the Big Eight teams offering me, visits and scholarship offers, and basketball, which I really liked. Played well in that. And football worked out real well. Actually, I excelled at that. I played wide receiver and on the offense, and played a cornerback on defense, and had some success. I actually started as a sophomore in high school. Actually, growing up in high school, our high school didn't start to the 10th grade, and I was was a starter in all of the sports I played from my sophomore year on up. So it just worked out well that way. And from that point on, I played well in football. And as you know, football comes around first in the year. Got a scholarship offer from, actually, I think it's the only scholarship offer. I had a couple of smaller ones from, schools in the area. But Drake was the biggest one I'd gotten. And the funny thing is that I always got injured playing baseball. It's the weirdest thing. In football, I perfectly fine. Basketball, perfectly fine. Played baseball, I'd sprain an ankle, break a wrist, sliding, break a rib, just craziness in baseball. And I really thought, coming out of high school that I would, come towards the end of the school year that, I'd probably end up choosing to go somewhere and play baseball somewhere, which is something that I love. But Drake University came and made the offer, and my parents had kind of talked it over and said, "Hey, we're not really in position to really wait for your baseball because we're not going to be able to send you to college if without getting a scholarship, and we don't know if we want to wait that long to see if you're going to get one." So we kind of made a decision to just kind of jump at it when Drake offered the scholarship, and that's how I ended up being there. And unfortunately, they didn't have baseball, because if they did have baseball there, I would have got an opportunity to play both sports while I was there.
And you might have sprained an ankle.
Yeah, I might have sprained an ankle. You're right. Probably would have happened. And then the football coaches would have probably been a little ticked off. But yeah, so didn't start immediately when I went there, but halfway through my freshman year, I got into the lineup, and then it was history from there. So 3.5 years I was in the lineup at Drake University, and then from there we at that particular time we were in the Missouri Valley Conference, which is a pretty good conference.
Which actually Youngstown State's in right now.
Yeah.
With North Dakota State, North Dakota, South Dakota State, all those powerhouses in the old D1 AA.
Yep, that's what it was. And back then in the 70s, and my last season at Drake was 1980 season. Graduated in 81, and we just didn't get a lot of exposure. And unfortunately, all of us on that team were overlooked. We had another guy there who was our center. His name is Dennis McKnight. Actually got an opportunity to sign on with the San Diego Chargers and played with them, I think, for 11 or 12 years, fortunately. And I ended up really just going back to my hometown in Carthage, Missouri, and getting a teaching job. And, coached football, basketball, and track. And pretty much what I did is just do what I asked my athletes to do. If I asked them to go out and do some sprints or lift some weights, I pretty much did everything with them. So stayed in pretty decent shape. And it's a crazy story how I got the tryout.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, you actually thought your NFL dreams were kind of an afterthought in months after you finished college. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, because just didn't get any opportunities. I think I got a letter from the Cowboys, and that was about the only communication I think I got one letter from an agent, and that was about it. And like I said, we didn't really have the pro scouts coming to watch our spring ball or to come do a workout or anything. And we were pretty good, actually. My senior year, we were 8-3, so we did some damage there in our conference, but nothing about any bowl game or anything like that.
Who'd you get that letter from?
The Dallas Cowboys.
And Jerry Jones was not there at that time. He was
I don't think he was there.
He was just, I think, in the late 80s. He took over the Cowboys, and interesting things happen in different ways.
Well, the Cowboys have always been kind of a little different, is that they were always interested in just really good, solid athletes, and they were signing basketball players to NFL contracts, and track guys. They were signing anything and everything, and maybe find that diamond in the rough. And I think they've had some success doing that. In fact, just recently they talked about Jerry Jones wanted to sign LeBron James, and that's the reason. That's one of the reasons why LeBron James is such a big Cowboy fan, is because Jerry was really into signing him if he ever decided he wanted to play football. So LeBron is, the people in Cleveland used to get really upset when he used to wear his cowboy hats around. But hey, that's probably the reason why he was such a fan of the Cowboys, because if it didn't work out for him in basketball, he had another opportunity in football.
Well, for the record, I have it right here. This is my Browns gear. So as some of my family members are cross the border, which we don't talk about them, but there's always the Steelers.
You're right there. You're right there. Yeah, you're right there in the middle of both cities, aren't you?
Yeah, Youngstown is the smack dab right in the middle of Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And we've known each other for a long time, pretty much, and we do know you have basketball skills. We have video of you playing basketball in charity basketball games. So you have been a very athletic person over your career. And
I hope your buddy that you said about the basketball and the MVPs that I won there, I hope that one prosecutor that we know is watching and about that, because I know he wanted those MVPs. Is he listening as well?
I think Nick Graham is available. I think he was going to be listening in. I'm not exactly sure, but I'll leave that between you two. and some things people may not realize is you actually played in the Canadian League.
Yeah. And
you played at Drake as an undrafted. Now they call them undrafted free agents.
Right.
You played in 82-84, the Canadian Football League with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. You earned all-state honors in the last 2 seasons. You had 2 interceptions in your I mean, you were making it just as you were at Drake. And next thing you know, you get a call.
Yeah. Well, in any sport, I think, regardless of where you're at, exposure is big. And for whatever reason, that Missouri Valley didn't get a lot of exposure back then. Because I think if we did get exposure, like the Big 8 or the Big 10 or, the SEC or ACC, I think that I would have gotten recognized. And I think that happens today. I think there's lots of athletes out there that still get overlooked. And, it happens. You look at Tom Brady. I mean, 6th round, really? I mean,
that diamond in the rough.
Yeah, diamond in the rough. So you got guys every year, I think, that kind of slip through the cracks, and they just need that one opportunity. And that's kind of what, when I go back and speak to football teams and high schools, I just tell them, I said, listen, there's the exposure is big, but if something happens to where you kind of fall through the cracks, you got to stay ready. And if you stay ready for that opportunity, and when that opportunity comes, you got to nail it. And I always kind of preach that, because I was that guy that kind of slipped through the cracks. But when I got the opportunity, I made the best of it, because I was in shape, increased my speed, and just caught the ball when they threw it to me. Got the opportunity to get on the field and made plays. And I think that was that was the big thing. I think that got me the tryout was because of my workouts, because I had a tryout with Houston. And got caught up in the numbers game, and they had to let me go. But immediately got picked up by the Hamilton Tiger Cats, because they said, this guy can run, he can make plays. And immediately the first game I went up there and played, got an interception off of Warren Moon in Canada. So,
how everything comes back around.
Yeah. So, and it started from there, just getting that one opportunity and making the best of it. And it took off from there. And playing 3 years in Canada, 8 years in the NFL. So the crazy thing about that is that I went undrafted, got an opportunity, took advantage of it, played 8 years in the NFL, 3 years in the CFL, 11 years total, and 11 years was a starter, which makes no sense.
Well, and I think one thing that people may not know is during your really good season in the NFL, outside of the Canadian Football League, you actually played for 3 teams. You played for the Cleveland Browns, which is pretty much your longest stint, was 6-7 years.
Yeah.
And then for the Vikings and the Kansas City Chiefs for a short period. So, and I think you're a well-known household name for the Cleveland Browns. So what was it like to play in the 85-90 seasons with the championship teams, the Bernie Kosars, the Kevin Macks, that really made a difference?
Well, we were a close knit team. Actually, probably the closest knit team that I've ever been with. We did everything together. We went out together, we golfed together, and obviously we played well together. And I think that had a lot to do with it because, and I think that's the reason why the fans are so fond of those teams, because we were out in the community, and it's tough to see some of the guys out in the community these days, and they'll be out there for an event they have to do, but we were truly out there with the people, down in the flats. Pretty much every night we were out there in the off season. During the season, we kind of scaled it back to only a couple nights a week, but I think that's the reason why we had so much success, and the fans, love the Dogs, because we were there for them, and we worked hard. And to go back a little bit is when you mentioned the teams I played for, it's kind of wild that I realized that I came in with Marty. Marty's the one that brought me to Cleveland, and then I went out with Marty, because when I went to Kansas City, I played my last game with Marty. So that's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, especially when you're that close, a coach that can look for talent like a Marty Schottenheimer or a Bill Belichick, who I don't know if many people know this, but Bill Belichick was the head football coach for the Cleveland Browns at one time, and
that was his first gig.
Yeah, and I think people are kind of dumbfounded. It's like, wait, what? So it kind of just all that understanding that we have a close-knit, tight family of Cleveland Browns fans. They are the best fans in the country, and everyone will say that. But
I agree.
With everything that goes on in Cleveland, with all the championships in the 60s and all those, and now over to the NFL, we kind of look at that. Now we have a good team in the 80s and the 90s that, hey, we're getting to the AFC championship games. We're getting there. We just can't get over the hump, but we continue to play well.
Yeah, getting over that hump. We had awesome teams, and we still feel that we were the better team. But it's just one of those deals where Denver just had our number. It was nothing that we could do about it. They just had our number. They had a great quarterback, and they had great personnel. So we just wish that they would have played a little better in the Super Bowl, because every time they beat us, they lost in the bowl, but came back years later to win a couple, which I was kind of happy about, that they got over the hump. It's kind of tough going to the big game and losing every time, but kind of like Buffalo, they went to four straight times and didn't win. At least Denver lost the first three, but was able to go back and win two, so that was kind of cool. I was rooting for them to get that done.
And that was in the late 80s, where in 89 you actually led the NFL in interceptions with 9.
Yeah, that was a goal of mine that I've had since the beginning. I always wanted to lead the league in interceptions. I didn't get it done in the CFL, but I got it done in the NFL, which was really cool.
Well, and I think now we look at present time. The new Browns come in late 90s, early 2000s, and there's just been this trend of new head coaches, new personnel. Now we're at a time where there may be some sort of continuous growth. You got Baker Mayfield, you got OBG, and now with the draft picks that they just did, 4 offensive players, 3 defensive players with the 7 picks they have. So we look at all these draft picks that can really make an impact going right out there.
Yeah, I think this is. We're definitely in position to do some things, and last year's situation. Our coach was young, first time head coach, made some mistakes. Our quarterback made some mistakes, and hopefully, our quarterback comes back and regains his confidence. And we got a head coach, I think, that, hopefully comes through. You never know with the first-year head coach. It's kind of the same thing as the guy we had last year in Freddie. But I think this guy is a little more advanced and is ready for the job. So I just hope that he can pull these guys together and make it happen. We got great personnel. I think the personnel, I don't know if it matches the '80s teams that we had, because the '80s teams we had great personnel on both sides of the ball, and I don't know if we have great personnel on both sides of the ball currently. I know we do offensively. Defensively, we're not quite there yet. We got great, I think, defensive line, and we probably medium in the secondary, and the linebackers are really young there. So we just got to figure that out, and we're young, which is a plus. And so we'll see what happens, with that. But when you talk about the Ravens and the Chiefs, boy, you got to put points on the board. And you got to be able to stop them, and then that should be the goal, is to be able to compete against those kind of guys and those kind of teams.
Well, and that brings up a good point, is we have built an offense. We needed a lineman to help protect Baker Mayfield. We needed some defensive players on the linebacker as well as the defensive backs to really fill in some of the gaps that we lost in either free agency or we lost to retirement. And I think this helps with the additions of Wills Jr. from Alabama, from Elliott from actually Missouri, your home area, home state, Jacob Phillips from LSU. So you got two LSU defensive players there, where OBJ and a couple of other players have gone to college. So you have that tight-knit group where you may have that continuously. And I think one thing that really mounts up is you also got a great tight end from Florida Atlantic, Harrison Bryant, who is tremendous as a great round 4 pick.
Right.
And Dominant Peoples from Jones from Michigan, who are both very talented wide receivers, tight ends. So this gives Baker Mayfield more weapons. Now, hopefully they can evolve going forward. I mean, the schedules we have is a pretty, I think they said it's a top 10 easiest schedules from what, if everything from theories and people talking about scheduling and how draft picks are gone.
Yeah.
But I think no matter what you say about schedules, it could be the easiest schedule or it can be the most challenging schedule. It's all playing on the field.
Absolutely. That's important. Anytime you have a losing season, I don't think there's a such thing as an easy schedule or tough schedule.
Not in the NFL.
Yeah, not in the NFL. Even the team that wins 1 or 2 games can come up and can get you at any time. I remember back in '88, I think it was, is that the Green Bay Packers came into Cleveland, hadn't won a game, and they got us, at home. And so you can't overlook any opponent, because they can get you anytime. They can have all things going for you that one particular day. 9 times out of 10, they won't come close to you, but that one time they can get you, and that's all they got to do is just do it that one time to get by you. So, we're not going to sneak up on anybody, that's for sure, this year, because we have a talented ball team. It's just if we perform the way we're supposed to, we're going to be okay. That's all we can ask for.
Well, and the schedules were just released about I think a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about how the very first weekend out of the block, it's the Baltimore Ravens at Baltimore.
Yeah.
What a schedule! That's your first week in the regular season.
Yeah,
and it's like they just added on from there. Now we're going to Cincinnati at home. Then the Washington Redskins in week 3, and then our favorite team that we were just discussing earlier, the Cleveland Browns at Dallas Cowboys week 4, October 4th, which should be an interesting one in that stage.
Yeah, because everybody should be going on 100% go. But yeah, that first game, that opening game, is gonna test us. We always seem to play well in Baltimore, even when we didn't win many games that one year. But it seems like Baltimore, the Browns play well, and they went in there and beat them last year, I think, in game 2 or 3. So they'll be ready for us. but I feel good about that. And I think
Well,
I think somebody mentioned not too long ago that I don't know who it was, but I think we've only won one opener in the last 20 years.
there's a stat that says something. I think we're not the good first week team.
Yeah.
But it falls back onto a couple years ago with Hugh Jackson. We were 0-15 going into the final game.
Yeah.
And came out on a victory, which then turned into the first pick, Baker Mayfield, and then going from there. So there's been a whole lot of different transitions for the Cleveland Browns, which I love them to death, and we just want them to win. And we look forward to that. But then we get into that. Now we're in pandemic, COVID-19.
Yeah.
Now you got reports that NFL execs are planning for no fans in the stadium, but then they're now planning fans in the stadiums to fill them up. So, and they also talked about the opening season is September 10th. So right now they're on schedule for September 10th.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there also is talk about moving it back to October, or even playing in empty stadiums if it becomes serious. So you've worked with the NFL for years. What do you think some of the precautions or what's going to happen moving forward?
Well, it's hard to say because money gets in the way, and there's been a lot of discussions and they're trying to figure it out. I don't know how it's going to work with no fans. That's going to be kind of weird. It's going to definitely take away the home field advantage, I feel. But we got to do what we got to do to get the games in. We'll still be able to see them on TV, which I think is important. But like I said, they got to put the facts together and see what's going to work best and how they're going to protect people best. As you see these last couple of weekends when they've opened it all up down in the flats here in Cleveland, down in Florida, there's no social distancing going on. I don't know if that's because people aren't taking it seriously or they just don't care. But in football games, there's a lot of spewing going on, a lot of yelling, a lot of
sweating, a lot of sweating.
Yeah, a lot of sweating, a lot of saliva moving around a lot. It's going to be important that if they do let fans in there, they got to wear the mask, and which is good. The game is going to change definitely here this year and moving forward.
And I think that brings up a good point because there was a report by ESPN Miami that actually revealed that the Dolphins, this came out of the Miami area, that Dolphins revealed plans for hosting fans in the stadium. So there's been multiple reports from different outlets that say that stadiums want to bring people in. And like you said, it's going to be money too when you can't bring in ticket dollars and you have to pay very big salaries across the board.
Right. So yeah, it's and you know what, they'll learn a lot from basketball, I think, because baseball is a little different because they're already social kind of distance there from each other, but basketball, they're up on each other. So we'll see how it works out well for them, and then I'm sure they'll be studying and seeing what's going on with that and see how that works out, and then transform it into how they should handle the football guys. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how it works. And I have no idea how it will work, but either way it goes, I'll be there because I'm an inspector and I'm required to be there if I want to get paid.
Now, people may say, Inspector Felix, what are you doing as an inspector? So,
you know what? This is going to be my 20th year. Can you believe that?
And why don't you explain to everyone what an inspector really is for the NFL?
Well, they started this program back in 1999 where they felt that they needed to get a grip on sabotage of the sponsorship of the NFL. So in 1999 was actually when the Browns' first season came back. And they, traditionally the way they wanted to do it is they wanted to hire an inspector that was a retired ball player from that particular team. But since the Browns came back that first year, for whatever reason, they didn't pick a Browns player. They picked up a guy named Gary Jeter, who was actually from Cleveland, but got drafted to the LA Rams and also played for the Giants. But he's lived back in Cleveland, had a business, and Gary Jeter actually was an inspector year one. And then they switched it to Eddie Johnson, who was, a retired Browns player. And then Eddie obviously became ill. And then I got invited to become I came highly recommended what the NFL had told me. Because, I was working at a bank at that particular time and was about to quit the bank and go into my own company, which was to be a consultant of the finances for NFL players. And so I was, was traveling a lot to go watch the players that I were working with a lot. And I kind of turned it down twice. And they just kept coming back at me saying, we'll just try it for 1 year. And if and we'll go from there. We'll get another guy the following year. So I did it. My first year was 2001, and it worked out. And so they've never switched it. Actually, 5 years ago, we brought on another guy that I played with, Reggie Langhorne. I think he's going into his 6th year, and we have a grand old time. But the definition of a NFL inspector is that what we do is we protect the NFL sponsorship of sabotage. So, the sponsorship of the league is, for one, the official apparel sponsor is Nike. So the official drink of the NFL is Gatorade. Official computer is Motorola. The official headset is Bose. The official cap is New Era, which probably most people know. But my job and Reggie's job is to just make sure that those products don't get sabotaged by any player, coach, or referee. So when a player, coach, or referee comes out of the locker room and the bright lights start when they come out on the field, we got to make sure that they're dressed correctly and they don't have anything other than the sponsorship when they come out. So when you hear about the guys in each city, and including Cleveland, of a guy getting fined for not being dressed properly or maybe wearing a watch,
wrong shoes,
or shoes, or not wearing the right shield, though we are the guys that actually go up and talk to those players and ask them to remove it and get the correct stuff on. Then we give them X amount of minutes to get it changed and get it corrected. And if it's not corrected in that amount of time, we fine them. And so when you hear about a player being fined for an infraction, that's usually coming from me and Reggie. Yeah.
So you're the guys that are finding all the players on the field when they are wearing watches or they're wearing shoes that they should not be wearing. That's some interesting. Right. That's some interesting insight that people may not know.
Yeah. Well, I think it all started off back in the day. They said this is getting a little bit out of hand because my last couple of years with the Browns, we were, Webster Slaughter was going by everybody's locker painting their shoes orange with spray paint, and it got to be pretty crazy there. But the fans picked up on it. They started spray painting their tennis shoes too. So it was a good deal. But now we got the shoes companies and the companies out there that support the NFL actually come out and we have orange shoes and brown shoes. Now we don't have to spray paint them.
Well, and you know how it is. If OBJ or Baker Mayfield's going to put something on a shirt, it's going to replicate to their fans.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's where that gets into it. So, well, I appreciate you taking the time. I got a couple questions from a couple fans. Are you interested in a couple Q&As?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, here's one question. Why did you have so much success against Warren Moon?
Wow, that's a good question. You know what? Every game I played against Warren Moon, I intercepted him, which is crazy. I had the most. He's the one I had the most success with. My first game in the Canadian Football League was against him, the Edmonton Eskimos, He saw the new guy out there. He tried me. I intercepted it, took it about 40 or 50 yards. And then he left after that year. I stayed another 2 years up in Hamilton, came back down in 85. And in 85, we played him twice a year. So the games that I started, for 6 seasons, for whatever reason, he threw me the ball. So probably over half of my interceptions were Warren Moon. But I have to tell you, I have to give my coaches credit, because the reason why I think as a Browns player we had so much success is because we were students of the game. Our guys, we knew exactly what the opponent wanted to do in every situation, down and distance. We were quizzed on it, and we knew that team, and I think that has a lot to do with it, because when you go out there and play a team, and if you know what they want to do before they do it, then you can just read and react versus working your way through it. And so it gave me an opportunity to maybe jump some routes and jump some things. Now, if I didn't know that, I wouldn't. Maybe, if I'm a second too late, I just make the tackle. But being a student of the game, as our coaches taught us, it was able to give us an advantage where we see something, we react, go get it, and we make the play. And I think that's the reason why we had so much success on defense. And I had great guys like Clay Matthews, Hanford Dixon, Frank Minifield, Mike Johnson, Eddie Johnson. We had great personnel on defense and make things happen. And obviously on offense, when you got Mack and Biner and Cosart on the outside, you got Langhorne and Slaughter and Brennan and Ozzie Newsome, the Hall of Famer. It's a tough team to beat.
And we talked when I was up at training camp. We talked to Kevin Mack, and Mack, we were talking just about old times and how he didn't get invited to the charity basketball games that we were putting on. So, but I'll leave that for another subject. Here's a great question. This one's from Michelle Martin, and she says, "Who was the most influential to you throughout your career?"
Oh boy, the most influential. You know what? I don't know if I have any current guys that were the most influential. I just knew when I was growing up, I had some guys, some players that I grew up in Missouri, so I grew up a big Kansas City Chief fan.
Oh,
so, yeah, a big Kansas City Chief fan, and I was so happy that they won it this year. If the Browns can't win it, I want the Chiefs to win it.
Yeah, but hey, there ain't nothing wrong with that.
That's right. So Emmett Thomas was my guy as a defensive back. I just loved him. And he's still coaching today for the Chiefs. He's been coaching a long time. And then probably on offense, I had a number of guys on offense for the Chiefs. A guy named Otis Taylor, and then there's a guy that I always used to call him my uncle. His name was Elmo Wright. And I thought they had the best hands and the best dances when they scored a touchdown. So those guys, and especially probably Emmett Thomas, who was a defensive back, I used to study him, and he was actually when I went to Kansas City, he was a coach there. Just learned a lot from him from just watching his work habits and what he did out there on the field. And those are probably my biggest influences and wanting to be a ball player. But, I learned a lot from Minifield and Dixon, too. Minifield and Dixon, they were students of the game. And they, those guys were successful by, doing the things they needed to do on the field and understanding what the receiver was trying to do to them. They took that away, which made my job a lot easier, which gave me an opportunity to roam more and be able to watch the ball and see where it was going to make a break and try and get the ball back to Bernie and the guys.
Well, and that's an interesting group of individuals that really inspired you to do what you do.
Yeah.
I got another question here. This one's from Jack.
Jack. Okay.
Yep. Jack's question is, what is your best moment that you can remember from the NFL or the Cleveland Browns?
The best moment. Wow. Yeah. I got a lot of best moments. It's hard to just choose one.
Give us a couple of them.
A couple of them. Well, wow. Yeah, that's a tough one. Probably, just speaking of just my personal, probably the best moment was, when we came off the strike in 1987, where we were on a 4-week strike, and that's when the replacements players came in and played, a lot of stress going on. We had people cross the line, and so there's a lot of dissension at that time. And we finally, the players came back, and I think it was week 5 we came back, and it was in October. And our first game back with all the regulars was we had a Monday night game against the Rams, and and our replacement players, only lost 1 game, I think, out of 4. So so they left us in pretty good position for a playoff run, and I wasn't quite in the lineup at that particular time, and was able to on Monday night intercept 2 passes, which were game breakers. It kind of turned the momentum our way, and actually catapulted me into the starting lineup. That's probably my, as far as personal, probably the best moment in my career, because it got me into the starting lineup, and I didn't look back after that. Started all the way until I step out of the game, which was kind of cool.
And I think okay, go ahead. Sorry.
And then just all the playoff games that I was able to play in with the Browns, because 5 of the 6 years that I was with the Browns, we were in the playoffs, and just those playoff games were just a different atmosphere. It's a different season, and the hype that it brings to the fans, and I'm looking forward to bringing that hype back to Cleveland with this team that we have now. It makes so much of a difference, and it does so much for the morale of the city. And like I said, we really connected with the city, and we had a blast.
Well, and that actually brings up this will be our last question unless we get a couple other ones. This question comes from Ted. Ted says, "We would love to see you suit up for the Browns."
Well, I don't think you want to see me dressed up now.
Have you ever thought about coaching in the NFL?
Well, you know what? I had a couple opportunities right when I retired, and I really just I was kind of somewhat 50% in, 50% out. I think as a ball player, when you first get out, you just kind of want to just kind of relax and kind of figure out what you want to do, because it was a grind. And coaches actually spend more time in the athletes preparing for the upcoming opponent and the upcoming season and the off season. They spend a whole lot of time, and I just didn't know if I wanted to dedicate that much time to the game, because I dedicated so much time keeping my body straight, getting ready for the upcoming season, and then going through a season. So I kind of chose not to go that route. So thus far I went into some businesses on my own, and went into the consulting business after I finished up with the bank, and it's kind of worked out okay. But then obviously, getting this gig with the NFL, being an NFL inspector, kind of kept me involved with the game. So that was kind of cool, because that was kind of unexpected as well. But I think I've chosen the right path. Yeah, would I have had fun coaching? I would have, and I would have loved to become a head coach. Not that that's a guarantee, but I think probably if I did go that route, I probably would have became a head coach. But because I like working with ball players, it would have been pretty cool to see what would have happened. But maybe in another life.
Well, you still have time. You're still young.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. That's all the questions for tonight. We appreciate you taking your time, Felix. It's always a pleasure to see and talk to you.
Yeah.
We'll be
you too, Tony. I appreciate the invite, and I hope you have great success. And hopefully, we brought another couple 100,000 viewers to your website.
Couple 100,000, one at a time. But I think the main focus is just to get factual information of what you've done in the past, where you've been, and just in general information that may not be able to get the information from multiple or fictional sources.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
I appreciate it, and maybe we'll do this again down the road.
Yeah, we'd love to have you anytime you want to be on. You're more than welcome. love the questions from everyone. It was great to see some interaction tonight.
Yes.
Felix, I think you're still loved by the football Browns fans.
Well, I appreciate that. I cherish that. In fact, I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I've connected with a lot of the Browns fans out there, and it's pretty cool. I get a chance to kind of talk to them here and there and post some things. So it's pretty cool.
Give us your Twitter feed. What's your username for Twitter?
I think it's at Felix Wright 22.
Yep, at Felix Wright 22. And if you want to follow him, go on to Twitter at Felix Wright 22.
All right, man.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Spanning the Need. Tomorrow we'll be speaking with Maria Stevens, executive coach and leadership consultant. Be safe and have a blessed day. Good night.